Okay, so welcome everybody. This is our fourth Garden Committee seminar that we've been putting on this year. And we are excited to keep on doing these throughout the season so that we're talking about seasonally pertinent topics for garden leaders. So I'm just going to go over just some of the general norms for our Zoom meeting, and then we'll get into the agenda and we'll dive right in. So as you're talking, just be aware of your mute button. Another thing to be aware of is if you want to turn on your camera, feel comfortable doing so, please do so. And then at any point, if you want to ask a question or interact, just feel free to unmute yourself and throw the question out there. We're happy to have an interactive time, like I was saying a moment ago before I pressed record. Then if you would like to, you could put some information about yourself into the chat box, such as your name, where you're coming from, and what you're hoping to learn about today. You're welcome to do that as well. Or again, unmute yourself if you want to introduce yourself. And if we could just give introductions to ourselves, the staff that are here, it's making up most of the meeting. But Julie, I'll let you start. You can introduce yourself, and then Stevie, you can go, and then I'll follow up.
Okay, well, good morning. My name is Julie Lehman. I'm our garden project manager, and I'm excited to share with you all today. Linda, we can't hear you, so please feel free to introduce yourself maybe in the chat, what garden you're from. We, with this session, we certainly have prepared information, and we want it to be as pertinent and as relevant as you need in this particular moment. So this is an invitation that you will hear again from Matthew as well, but an invitation to ask questions and share your experience as well. So happy to be with you all this morning.
I'm Stevie Riley. I am the New American Engagement Specialist. So I help with any immigrants, refugees in our gardens, making sure that they have the right languages and all that kind of stuff.
And I'm not on mute, I think, but my name is Matthew Romans. I'm the Program and Education Specialist here at Garden Project. And so part of my specialty is getting educational content out there to people. This year we've got some educational handouts that are especially aimed at getting people started gardening, like where to place your garden, and when to plant things, that sort of thing. So if you're interested in anything like that, feel free to visit our website. We've got some of them posted there. The agenda for today is gonna be where we're at right now, welcome and agenda. It's what we're presently doing. And then after that, I just want to do a little bit of a review of what we're doing this year with the Garden Committee Toolkit. And then after that, we're going to dive into our discussion and topics, where we're going to be talking with Mary Beth a little bit about hosting great events and how she's done that within her garden. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Mary Beth. And then we're going to be talking about hospitality, communicating garden needs and updates, summer maintenance, and fund management. And then afterwards, we'll have a time for just summary, more questions. And of course, you can interact at any point. Feel free to ask questions throughout. And then I see that you interacted with the chat there, Linda. Thanks so much for letting us know where you're coming from in Clarkston. I'm not sure I'm familiar with where Clarkston's at, but anyway, that's great. All right, so I just wanted to get into this introduction into who we are as a garden project. So if you're not familiar with our work, we help to manage and support a wide variety of community gardens throughout the mid-Michigan area that comprises 30 acres of growing space, like 88 community gardens. A lot of those are in the greater Lansing area because there's more people in Lansing than there are in some other less big cities in mid-Michigan. But so that's just a very broad overview of some of the work that we do. You can see that there's a map right there that is an image from our website. That it's an interactive map that people can go to. It's very helpful for people to locate a community garden that's nearby them. Another big component of what we do is we get free plants and seeds and other tools and growing supplies out into the community for free. So we take in seed donations and we grow our own transplants and also receive donated transplants from stores and nurseries during the spring and early summer months to distribute those out through our resource center, which is located, you can see the address there at 2401 Marcus Street. It's in the east side neighborhood of Lansing, not too far from Frandor Shopping Center. And if you'd like to have more general information about Garden Project, you can always follow that website link that's posted there or call us at that phone number, 517-853-7809, and you'll talk with our lovely administrative staff, Martha. So, introduction into the Garden Committee Toolkit. What we wanted to do this year was we wanted to create some very practical tools for people to be able to latch onto so that people can feel equipped to really dig into their community garden. Mary Beth, this ties into something that you were saying a few minutes ago about wanting to make sure that people can follow after you. So this is very much tied into that heart of we want to equip a group of people within a garden so that it becomes a committee and not just an individual leader leading gardens. So what we've done is we've created these 15 tasks or tools, and we've kind of put them into 4 broad sections, which are coordination, membership, maintenance, and community building. Another way to think about this is I took this diagram from Grow Pittsburgh, which is another community garden network, obviously in Pittsburgh. But I really like this diagram, which kind of illustrates that you can kind of see that there's a core of people, 6 people or so. These are rough approximations of what a committee could look like in terms of numbers. It could be less, could be more, but you've got people at the core who are making decisions, doing a lot of that communication, and then 15 people who are more engaged, come to the garden work days and community meetings, and then a larger group outside of that who may be connected and wanting to take care of their own bed, and then sometimes some other activities, and then there's even wider circle outside of that. But we're trying to really encourage people to move in and become more and more involved as they're able. Here's an illustration of that lovely handout that we've developed, which outlines those 15 tools that I just referred to a minute ago. So you can see all 15 are listed there, which involves hosting spring garden orientation, member registration, plot assignments, all within these different categories of coordination, membership, maintenance, and community building tasks. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that we're going to be focusing on today, because those are the ones that are seasonally appropriate. We've already kind of moved beyond plot assignment at this point, almost. It's June 1st as we're recording, but we covered that during our last seminar. So this morning, we're going to be talking about some of the things already outlined in our agenda: fund management, seasonal maintenance, hospitality, community building, and just communicating general and seasonal updates throughout the year to all the garden members. And then again, just wanted to note that the heart behind this is to keep the roles clear and straightforward, and to understand that flexibility will be very important to all this. We're giving structure to this, but we want people to be able to take these tools and apply them how it's best fits their situation in their garden context. So we hope that these will be helpful for you as you adapt them to your own particular needs. Oh, and then there's this other thing. And make sure more than one person knows how to access essential garden info. So again, in line with what you were saying a few minutes ago, Mary Beth, this is all about community building and passing on some of the vision to others, and to learn and manage existing responsibilities before they take on more. It's important that we do this incrementally. So we're going to dive right in after giving that overview to some of the work of Garden Project and the toolkit. I hope that gives some good context. I don't know, Julie and Stevie, if you want to dive in with more context at any point before you're speaking, feel free to do so. But we're going to dive into talking with Mary Beth as we talk about hosting great events. And Julie and Stevie, as you want me to move on with slides, you can just say next slide.
Good. Well, I will just take a quick moment to say hello again to Mary Beth Van Horn. I've had the privilege of knowing Mary Beth for about 10 years now. She's been a community garden leader in the city of Lansing, given a lot of heart and a lot of sweat equity to her community garden space. Next slide, please, Matthew. So you can see a picture of Holmes Street Community Garden here, and I will hand the mic over to Mary Beth. Mary Beth, will you start us just sharing a bit on the location of your garden? Give us a snapshot of who gardens there, what's grown, and who it's for.
Hello, I'm Mary Beth, and I am the garden coordinator for Home Street's Community Garden, and we have been at 907 Home Street for 13 years. This is our 13th gardening season. Better known as next to the party store on Holmes and Malcolm X, if you're familiar with that area on the east side. Because you can see the orange building, that's the party store. We butt right up to it. And we have 12, as you can see, inside the fence garden plots. And that makes up our core gardeners. There's 12 different gardeners. Well, actually, sometimes there's 8 because they have 2 garden plots, which is okay with us. It's okay with everybody, but that's our core group. And those gardeners will plant whatever they want. They tend that plot for their family, friends, and some of them do it just for a donation. And that is their responsibility. And we communicate weekly. I send your newsletter out to them, plus anything that's going on that is needed within our garden. And that communication is key. And I love the fact that they're always available or willing to help. What we have is outside the fence, and it now actually has a pallet fence surrounding the chicken wire that you see. That we created for anybody and everyone. It's more of an edible walk. We have 12 different herbs, flowers, as you can see, strawberries, asparagus. We plant cherry tomatoes. We plant pole beans along the fence line. And anyone that is outside of that fence can pick and take whatever they want, as well as strawberries and raspberries and grapevines that we have as well. And that's the core of our group. That's who we are and where we are. You asked me for a brief history.
Yeah, how did the garden come into existence? What was the original vision of the garden, and has
Yes.
that evolved or changed at all through the years?
Well, that is a fun story. We started 13 years ago. We have a neighborhood association, and one of the neighbors was at Paradise and moved into our neighborhood and thought, oh, we should have a community garden, because there's a lot of people that have too much shade or they have pets and they really can't have a backyard garden, or they've tried and it's not very successful. And the neighbors were all excited about it. And then this particular lot was I hate to say it, but it was a drug house that was torn down. We had the soil tested, by the way, everything is good. And it's owned by the land bank. But it had wonderful sun. And most of us thought, yeah, let's put something positive up there, because we already were seeing how that empty lot was becoming a trash magnet. And we could see already issues we had. That was our problem corner. So let's put something positive up there. And that's what we did. So we had a core group of people. Julia actually was the lead for this and got us registered with you guys, got us registered with the land bank, and that was our start. And that was 13 years ago. And staying with it really made a difference to that corner. The neighbors now, I know them all, and they come up and they thank us because not only has it brightened up the corner, but it's just fun. It's a fun. You can see my tire wishing well. We have people that don't like the garden who can add to it just to make it look pretty, just to make it look fun. And so we've done that. So that kind of leads into our vision because over the year, our vision has changed, our to-do list has changed, but our core has always been to brighten up that corner and grow more than just a garden, to grow a community, to build our community as well as to teach a skill of gardening on how to grow your own food to people. Just a real quick true story. Um, we had a 30-year-old from Chicago move into the neighborhood, just 2 houses from the garden. So he's walking by and he's fascinated. So obviously we start talking. He has never, ever seen this much dirt, and he's never grown anything. So I actually had an extra plot. So I said, well, let's get you a plot. We got some seeds and some starter plants for him. And he went out. He was so excited. He dug a hole, takes a packet of carrots, and dumps the whole packet of carrots into this one hole. And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm going to plant carrots. No concept of basic gardening in rows. So the gardeners all took him under their wings because I guess I just never realized that somebody wouldn't have a grandfather that taught them how to just put a basic garden together. And there's many, many, many out there like that. They really do not know the concept. So that's where it's like, okay, we need to build these skills. And we started working with the kids. We put little plots in the back for the kids so that they learned how to dig that hole, or not a hole, but that row, and to teach them that skill. And so, in a nutshell, even though our to-do list has changed over the year, our core value and our core vision has always been the same, which is to teach that skill of gardening and improve our neighborhood, just brighten up that corner. And see the need, fill the need, like I said before. One of the things that we noted, which goes back to the outside edible, we noted that there were a lot of people because we're on a very, very busy corner with the corner store and we have a bus stop right in front of us. So we meet a lot of people in the neighborhood. And one of the things we noted a couple years ago were there were a lot of people who really needed and wanted fresh vegetables, but they were working 2 jobs. They were taking care of a family and they just didn't have the time or energy. So that's when we expanded upon that edible and we put the pole beans because we get so many pole beans. We put the cherry tomatoes because that yields so much. And even within our garden, you can only eat so many zucchinis, right? And you don't even want a freezer full of zucchini for over the winter. So that's when we built the free bin. And we have that free bin, which is right next to our garden with a little note saying, please take whatever you need, but respect our gardeners and, don't pick from inside the fence. And that has been wonderful. It's not only our core gardeners that we can fill that up with. But our neighbors who had overabundance were like, hey, can I bring some tomatoes up? Because I'm not going to use all these. So they're able to share. And then one of our neighbors works at Peckham Farms. And I'm going to do a shout out for them because for the past 2 years, he's got the okay from his manager to bring anything that legally they can't sell, but is still good produce. And he puts it in our free bin. He actually has a line waiting for him every Friday now. And it's really, really special. And it just goes for sharing and helping because even though we want to teach people how to do this, we have to listen and know that not everybody has that time. And so this way we still can share and it's all anonymous so they can come at night and take things and not feel embarrassed if they need it, if they need that food. So those are our cores to
Well,
help
those,
people and build.
I'm so glad you shared even that story. And those are a couple things that I pulled out and heard from you was, the events and the hospitality, it's stemming from the relationship. It's not, we have a garden and we should be doing this. It stems from you really knowing your neighbors, knowing who is around and engage, could potentially participate with that garden. And then, molding what the garden can offer to the community by engagement with the neighbors, seeing, yes, people's time is limited, but they want to engage for the garden. Okay, what can we then do as our event or our reach out? So that's what I heard from you is just
Yes.
having the basis of the relationship with your gardeners and with your community, and then that forms where your efforts are put. So I'd love to
Absolutely.
still share a few more minutes about what are some of your takeaways? And Mary Beth, I know you have a lot, but what do you think other garden coordinators, even garden participants, people do not have to be a
Yes.
coordinator to help out with an event or, do some outreach in their garden. What do you think some gardeners should know about engaging community, whether it's a formal or informal event?
Well, Julie, you kind of took my last point there, but that's okay because
You'll
I
say
can
it better than
I
I
can
ever
I can
would.
expand on
Please.
it. Um, because that was your last question was what would I share? And each garden in each neighborhood really is different. They have their own flavor. So for me, the big takeaway is know your people, listen to your people, and try different things. You know, um, what worked 10 years ago might not work today. So try different things. Um, say yes to anyone and everyone who wants to help. Um, that helps them. I have one neighbor who every time he walks by the garden and sees me, he buys me a snack and something to drink at the party store as a thank you. Do I need that? No. Sometimes I really don't need the extra candy bar. I really don't. But it makes him feel good. And that's important too. So take the help, take all of that, and take advantage of all the grants that are available out there. Um, but that is the main thing. Like you said, know who you are, know your audience when you're talking. Um, I will be the first person to tell you I am not the person to come to if your tomatoes are wilting. Go talk to Matthew. Go talk to somebody else. Um, because I still cannot get my corn to grow past my knees. 13 years and I still can't get it to grow. And if I'm happy when I get like 2 little ears that are this big. So I am so grateful that we have others that can teach that part. For me, it's, my focus is organizing and making sure it's all available. But that is my main giveaway to you guys is to listen, know, communicate. I'm finding that email is becoming obsolete. The younger group does not check their email. So learn how to use the text group because I really want more young blood, because my joints are really feeling my last week weeding vacation. And having that young blood is really key, you know, and exactly what Matthew said, being flexible, you know, uh, life happens. So you have this nice little plan and list that you want to do, and you've got two gardeners that, work exploded and they can't get up there and they need, so offer to help. And that's where that communication is there. Hey, I've got a couple gardeners that, they're not going to be able to finish weeding in order to plant in time. Can anybody come up and help? And we can get that plot done and help one another and grow with one another. So that's my main takeaway. You're absolutely right. Get to know people.
That's wonderful. I heard I love that as a general guiding light, like how you kind of even said for your garden vision, like have the vision, but then be flexible. And you said your garden, you've done it different ways, though, always with the same vision.
Oh,
And I'm hearing that even with your outreach techniques. The outreach is get to know the person. However, you are not tied to your certain way of, I always do a weekly email. So you need to check your email. I'm hearing you are flexible in how you communicate. So a couple of those
yes.
takeaways for me are just ask people how they want to be communicated with. Do they prefer a text? Do they prefer an app? So that's so helpful. And then I loved what you said about you make some pretty specific asks. Maybe you set a tone that everyone's welcome and invited and welcome to participate, but you aren't afraid to say, you said, I asked people, could you come help with this plot? So having
Yeah.
a very specific way that you also ask people to come engage too is I found that really helpful. Any
And that,
last note you might just make as like a, you know, be sure to give this a try this season if you have a goal around engaging community in your community garden.
I was going to just add to what you said on those specifics. Even when you have a group outside of your garden that's coming to help, which absolutely sign up for those, have those high school kids come and help weed and do things. But that's where you do want to make sure that you have A, B, C, D, E. You know, don't assume, like I did with Lamont, that he knew how to grow a row of carrots. Don't assume that your helpers know how to know the difference between rosemary and weed. Um, I had them weeding the herb plot, didn't think about it, and my rosemary was gone because it looked like a weed. So make sure that you are explaining that and that you have things marked for them. And don't feel the need to get down on your knees and weed with them. Let them do it and kind of oversee and make sure that you have the water available and you have everything available for them, and let them just, pull up the weeds and rake all the leaves.
Thank you so much. Maybe I'll just say Matthew or Stevie, if you have anything else that you'd like to pull out or ask of Mary Beth or Linda to ask or put in the chat, then we'll just take a moment here specifically for Mary Beth. Otherwise.
Uh, I think that was really fantastic. Thanks for sharing everything, Mary Beth. I like how that just kind of sets the tone for the rest of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I think your heart and your approach to this is really fantastic. So it's,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
And by the way, don't be afraid to try new. I grew up in Pittsburgh, so that's why I was clapping when you said this was a Pittsburgh you know, graph. I watched my grandfather plant, but that not really was not my comfort zone. And Julia was supposed to be the garden lead. She got it all organized, and then she moved to Indiana in the middle of the garden season. And I'm like, crap, that means I have to take over. And like I said, I don't know anything about gardening. So take advantage of the people that know those things, take advantage of their talents, their skills, and just don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying about your lack of awesome gardening knowledge is also a really good example too of like how much you can do just being really good at coordinating and like that this is people work.
Yeah.
So that's really I think that is a great example of just how community gardens work. You don't have to be an
Mhm.
expert gardener. You just need to be able to work with people, listen to them, and coordinate them. So
Yep.
that's awesome.
Well, I'm going to mute myself because you
Thank you
guys
so
know I
much.
can talk forever.
Okay. All right. I think I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Yes, perfect. Well, thank you again, Mary Beth. We're really privileged to know you and be part of your community. So I would love to share now just to expand out on community building in the community garden. So not only, as Mary Beth said, to our garden members, but also to our non-gardening neighbors in the greater community. So as you're thinking about what kind of time involvement this might take, if you are, you can feel your heart or mind kind of going that direction, but you're going, what am I actually signing up for here? This is one where really, if you want to participate in the community building side of your community garden, it could really happen anytime. And we're talking months before the garden even opens to have meet and greets come February or March and all the way through November as you're wrapping up as well. So, it's great that this is not one of those infrastructure type things that it must happen at this time because it's weather dependent. You can base this on what you and your community, what works for you and you and your community. All right, next slide, Matthew. So I do want to kind of set the tone for why we do this as well. You might sometimes be weighing, if you're saying, I could imagine, you coming off of this training and saying, it's June 1st. We need to make sure we're getting together and putting together a potluck and having everyone come together and meet and greet. And you might have someone else saying, are you crazy? Like, we haven't even finished laying out all of our, extension, irrigation lines or something. But what I do want you all to know is that community building side of the community garden creates the sustainability of that community garden. So it is really about establishing and then sustaining that community. Just only having the infrastructure in place does not mean that you have a whole community of gardeners there. It is work and intention to actually create that community. And the best gardens, the most connected gardens, I should probably say, will have that strong sense of community. And that comes from being very intentional about how we welcome others. So next slide. Some key points on how to get started with that. So we had shared in some earlier trainings, and we also have on our garden committee responsibility toolkit page that Matthew has highlighted for us, that an asset list can be a great resource that a garden puts together. So basically that is anyone that might be a gardener or in any way connected to your garden, to just make sure we have their name, their contact information, and say, this is how they like to support. So if Mary Beth was going to have her asset list, she'd probably have that neighbor that comes by and is always willing to like drop off a little snack to the group. Maybe they'd be willing to just pop by and say a hello during a work day. Just that's always very fun, to have people in the specific gardens who say, hey, I'm not going to always be able to come to potlucks. I work nights, but if something breaks, let me know. I could stop by there first thing in the morning. I know how to fix irrigation. So just asking everyone to be very specific on what asset they could offer the garden is really going to help you as you try to formulate your events and what would be meaningful to the community. We'll share more on this later, but as you're creating an event and an outreach opportunity, this is a great opportunity as always to be thinking about, is this universally accessible? And that is so hard. Everything just from scheduling to access points, it is difficult. But then again, referring back and asking people, what do you need in order to make this event work for you? And asking people, we want you here. How could we support you in joining that? And that might be childcare, that might be just having an even space to stand and not having your events at the back of the garden, but right up front in an adjacent parking lot. So that's just really drawing people out to say, what's hindering you from, joining in these community events a bit more. And of course, we can't talk about garden events without just giving shout outs, as Mary Beth would say, to the potlucks. So potlucks are a hit, but that is not the end all be all. You can find a unique way to bring your community together. Okay, next slide is a laundry list. So I'm breaking every PowerPoint rule, but I do want to have this documented so that we could have things and just a laundry list of things that we've seen in the garden and then out of the garden engagement. So we'll run through quickly. Of course, summer, spring, back to school, harvest potlucks. We've seen stone soup. I actually haven't seen that happen, but I love the idea of a stone soup potluck. Maybe harvest time, everyone brings something for a soup pot. And maybe you as a garden coordinator say, I'd love to do that, but we don't necessarily have a pot. That's an engagement opportunity. Just getting the word out, putting a sign up in your garden to say, this is what we're looking for. We also have improvement grants available with garden projects. So if you say, hey, we want to host a potluck or we want to host this type of event, could we have some improvement funds to do that? We would absolutely support you all in that. Great to have garden workshops. Mary Beth said, maybe there is a gardener who knows more about trellising or IPM or plant disease, and they're able to offer a little, even a half-hour workshop, I think could be really helpful for people to come get together and engage. We've seen some great corn roasts, digging out a pit in the back of the garden and doing a corn roast later in the season, bringing out a grill. And sometimes the work days, there was a garden that wouldn't call their Saturday morning weeding work days, come to the garden to weed Saturday morning. It was come have tea and muffins and together on a Saturday morning. And we'll also do a little weeding together as well. So it's just a bit of a reframe, and just know, no, you are not only needing to show up and get straight to work, you can come and you can have those conversations, just being really upfront of we want to create time, even during our work days, for socializing, getting to know each other. There's a garden up in DeWitt that has open hours. So they're open Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings. And they really encourage gardeners, try to work your schedule to come garden then. So that's not necessarily a formal event, but it's been institutionalized to say that is when we can kind of garden together, shoulder to shoulder across our plots, and by default have conversations when we are together. So maybe there's a time even for you where you say, I'm going to commit, every first Sunday or every other Thursday night, just putting it out to your fellow gardeners of saying, I'll be there. I'd love to run into you there, but just sharing your schedule in advance. If you always go to the garden at a certain time, say on a lunch break or before you pop into work. In the garden, I am a community gardener, and I will say I have not met everyone in the garden. And because you will just sometimes not have the same schedule, or you'll go to the event and you'll always miss each other coming and going. So even a message board where people can interact with chalk or post-it notes of just saying, I noticed those amazing tomato plants, or, great job, or flea beetles are getting me again. Just a way where you are seeing the person-to-person aspect when you are in that garden of, oh yeah, I am not here alone. I am connected to my community. And then there's just kind of those arts fun. What else? How can we use this space more to have an event? And it doesn't even necessarily need to be garden related. Certainly painting and art projects. And a kids club night. I wouldn't be surprised if many community gardens have kids, students connected with them, and perhaps there's a night where you say, once a month we get together and have a kids garden activity. Bring your kids out, and we'll enjoy some time in the garden together. And then on our out of the garden engagement, kind of what can you be doing to still stay connected to community? Next slide, please, Matthew. Are things like getting those newsletters or texts out we've seen gardens do garden profile of just say, you know, will you share a selfie of you in the garden and maybe your favorite plant, and can kind of get a group text going that way. Certainly on our website, we are always happy to put posts up for you all to give updates on events that you're going to have, or call outs of saying like, hey, our garden is looking for new gardeners, or we are asking you to come join us for a garden tour. We can put those events out on our website for you as well. Perhaps a survey or a suggestion box in the garden. And I am curious to know, are there other things that you are doing that we could add to this list? And I just want to emphasize that those connections between gardeners are going to have some very real tangible benefits. You know, if you know one another, the theft can decrease. You know, maybe food is not sitting there to rot because you know your fellow gardener is on vacation and you've already made the connection to help them harvest. Sharing those knowledge and skills, building friendships, and like Mary Beth said, just having fun. We can use that F word a bit more. A good community garden is a fun place. So anything else to add before we go to the next slide?
I really like the idea of a corn roast. That sounds delicious. So, no, these are a lot of really creative, fun ideas. It kind of gets my brain going around different things that could be done. I think one thing I've thought of before when trying to establish more ways to engage others is that it seems like a really great idea to just do something that you want to do regardless of how many people show up. That way you're just gonna, like, it can create an energy and a consistency with you showing up at the garden, even if everybody's not able to make it. It creates a rhythm and a pattern that then maybe eventually people start to tie into. So just a thought.
Thank you. All right, next slide, please, Matthew. We'll just share a couple other points on building community. I also just do want to point out that beyond the garden members, Mary Beth pointed to this, that engaging neighbors and the greater community can really also reduce theft in the garden, provide additional resources outside of your core group of garden members, be a source of volunteers and potentially new gardens. Like Mary Beth said, sometimes it's just a matter of the timing isn't right. You know, people would love to participate, but the time just isn't available, but knowing that there's always a space for them. So we really encourage visible signage with contact information at every garden, not only how to get involved, but a next time of just, if you do have set, you know, office garden hours or know you have an event planned, you know, put that up just in the garden for those walking by. They'll know if they come back at this certain time, they'll have a chance to meet with their community there. Certainly a tour is a great thing. I think we could also, I've seen at a garden in Kalamazoo where they have a little mailbox out front with some paper maps of their garden, and on there it says, you know, this is what our garden is about. Please feel free to walk around. You'll see the fruit trees over here, or, you know, different components to view, and it lets them know how to engage with the space. You can walk here. Please do not pick in these plots. So that could be a cute way just to engage the neighbors as well. And perhaps you'd have the opportunity to present to local organizations, Rotary clubs, Boy Scouts to Girl Scouts to recruit in an Eagle Scout for your garden. So having a little elevator speech ready and some slides of your garden. That could be a great opportunity. And we kind of breezed past the donation box, but Mary Beth highlighted that they have a donation component. And yeah, people love vegetables even if they can't grow them. So having that available right outside the garden and just saying, yes, you are a part of this community, and here is how we welcome you to engage with this garden. Like Mary Beth said, people aren't emailing as much anymore. We've been saying we need to do more videos, even if that's just a video from the very practical of, you know, here's how to unlock a garden shed, to more of the engagement type things of, you know, here's a little picture of our potluck that we had, or our workshop night, or our kids in the garden night, you know, just highlighting that, celebrating that. Outside neighbors, I think people are looking for a great story, and I think community gardens are some of the best. So before we move on, or before we transition to our next topic, I do want, again, just to highlight accessibility in our next slide. So what that can kind of look like. To have an event as accessible as possible, know what languages are spoken in the garden, know the languages of the neighborhood, and if possible, just say, have it advertised in multiple languages, and that night to have a translator available. It could be as simple as just saying like, hey, does anyone in your family, you know, could they translate for us? And we'd love to give you a extra, few tomatoes as a thank you for translating that night for us. Sharing in multiple formats. So again, not only the email blast out, but having signs up, text, reminders, day of, large and clear fonts if you are going to be putting up posters. Having things in advance. I feel like I'm notorious for just saying, we're going to have a garden meeting in 4 days. And, people have pretty busy schedules. So I wouldn't say don't let that hinder you. If you get excited about something, you see an opportunity and you can swing it for that weekend ahead, go for it. But advance notice is very helpful for people. Childcare and activities for kids. A kids corner would, even just stating kids are welcome. They are a part of our community and we want them here. Don't not come because you'd have to bring your kids. We want your kids there. They are part of it. Having enough seating, even if it's going to be a workshop or a tour, just knowing that not always easy for everyone to be standing for long stretches. So having some folding chairs available or lawn chairs for people that need it, and certainly a bathroom access if it's going to be a longer event. And that might be an opportunity for a business next door, just being able to say, could we use your bathroom for that event? So just to wrap everything up, last slide, I just want to share, I guess Mary Beth words almost exactly. I think every community has something that makes it special. That is what she shared, and that is certainly what we've seen. Those were many suggestions for events and activities, but please find what resonates with your community and then use that to bring people together. So I'll just wrap up asking you all, what are your ideas around engaging gardeners, or what questions do you have? So feel free to use the chat or take yourself off mute. Stevie and Matthew have seen a lot as well, so please feel free to jump in if you have something to share.
I'm still loving the corn roast idea, so I'm just gonna double down on that.
Yeah, I guess anything that involves food, that's always a hit. Linda, you have a garden tour every year. That's smart. Bring in the community.
Yeah, the food theme did certainly seem to shine out of the long list of ideas that you had in the slides, Julie. Though the other thing I was thinking about was just like, especially in one of the latest slides, was just what Mary Beth was saying a few minutes back, was just like it all is encompassed in knowing your people, knowing your community. Like you can get all like, that's the broad stroke, but I think it's helpful to have that general paradigm. It's like know your people. So yeah.
I've been wanting to do a seed swap some of our gardens, because I know a lot of our gardeners save their own seed and some of it's hard to access elsewhere. So I think they do it a little bit on their own already, but it'd be nice to have it be a thing. Well, that's nice. Taste of Clarkson. Yeah.
If you're like me and maybe 15 minutes or tomorrow, you'll get a great flurry of activities. So feel free, we'll keep using the chat and then we'll have more time at the end of this session just to have conversation and keep putting ideas out there. So thank you all. I'll pass that on to our next presenter on coordination.
Great, that is me. So again, each of one of these sections that we're about to dive into, the one that Julie just covered on hospitality, is all kind of couched within one of these broader categories. So this one is a coordination task. And what we're specifically talking about right now is communicating garden needs and updates throughout the season. So what is this? This is just like sharing garden-wide updates with all garden members, such as resource announcements, seasonal updates. And really this takes place, the communication always needs to happen basically all throughout the year. Though I would say that there's a gap probably in the wintertime where maybe people don't want to be communicated with as much around like Christmas time. I can't imagine too many people want to be thinking about gardening, though it is always exciting to think about like the seeds that you're going to order. Anyway, as a community garden, you probably don't need to be communicating in January. But anyway, so that's what we're covering. So some keys to success for this, as you're thinking about communicating broadly with all your people, is to be strategic about how often gardeners receive new information. And what I'm mainly thinking about here is digital communication. I think that's the emphasis of a lot of this presentation, but we'll get into some other options. But when you're communicating digitally, I have this example on the slide here of a very lengthy email. Not always the best because people's attention span is not getting any longer these days with all the digital media that we engage with. So try to keep it concise and relevant to all the gardeners. Otherwise, they might start to tune out to your messages. But I will say that lengthy emails sometimes are appropriate. There's nothing inherently evil about a lengthy email. You just have to think about what your goal is for the email, and does it like what the plan is, who your audience is. Obviously, your audience that we're talking about here is your gardeners. But if a lengthy email is appropriate, then that's good. But it would probably be hard to do this on the regular basis. Another key is to take a varied approach to communication using different channels so that everyone can have access to information. I'm going to get into that a little bit more in the next slide. And if you're finding that there are communication barriers with people with limited English, it might be good to try to find other like liaisons and interpreters, people that you can connect with that'll be an inroad to help you communicate with other members of your garden who maybe you can't communicate with directly. So that's a big deal. And then as a broad overview for what communication can look like throughout the year, I just wanted to note that just some of these main points. So in the springtime, I hope that this will kind of be like a good guide that people could refer to. The spring, you're going over like when garden registration opens. That could actually be happening in the fall as well, but whenever your garden registration opens, that's what you have to be communicating to everybody. Things like when compost has been delivered. There's this lovely picture of our past AmeriCorps worker dumping off a load of compost. Love that picture. Upcoming work days, weed checks. That's maybe more of a summertime thing. And then during the summertime, too, you're just going to want to at least be communicating with people about things like if there's something going on with the irrigation, if there are updates or repairs that are needed or something's happening, maybe if there's big disease outbreaks, if people could do something about it, that'd be great. And then garden theft prevention, if there are certain steps that you want to advise people to take, that would be really important too. And then in the fall, you'll need to communicate with people about when they need to clean up, and if there are any winterization needs that people need to go through. And then all throughout the season, you're just trying to pass on relevant local gardening information or workshops or grants, anything like that that might be applicable to your gardeners that would be helpful for them within the garden. So that's an overview of what some of the main points could look like. Obviously, there are more details that could always pop in, but there's some of the main points. So I was talking a few minutes ago about having multiple communication channels as a key tip for reaching out to people. You don't want to just be like fixed and rigid into one thing. Again, Mary Beth was talking about being flexible. So we have to think about, what are people actually engaging with? And also, Mary Beth, you mentioned that younger folks aren't engaging with email quite as much. Email is listed here as a good way to send a lot of information at once to everybody. It's easy. And a tip with that is that sometimes people don't always want their email address shared. So I would recommend that what we generally do at Garden Project is we try to BCC people. I don't know what that stands for, blind, something. You can't see their email address. But pretty much everybody texts. So texting, it can be a great option if you have a mode for sending out group text to people or just communicating with them individually. That is fantastic. And there can be translation options and apps that people have built into their phone, also great for people with limited English. Uh, but I know for myself that I've always got my phone with me, so and I communicate by text. So if people are texting me, then that's a great way to get a hold of me. And then there's always calling too. Calling can be challenging again if you're trying to communicate with people with limited English, but not always. I mean, I actually just called a gardener last night who had limited English, and he happened to be around a bunch of other people. So we just put somebody else on the phone to translate for him. So it all worked out. So calling can work even if you're a little bit afraid or timid sometimes that somebody might not have the English to have a good conversation. Give it a go anyway. Worst thing that can happen is there's no conversation that happens. So it'll all work out. Some more communication channels are WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger are two biggies. I'm going to ask at the end here if you all have any other recommendations about good channels, but we've found that these are two pretty popular apps, especially for new Americans, because what does it say here on the list? They don't require cell service; they just require Wi-Fi, which is pretty handy. And I put these icons on here, so that's what the little app icon looks like. The green one is WhatsApp, and then the technicolored one is Facebook Messenger. If you're ever interested in downloading these apps, and I believe that you can interact with these apps on a computer as well if you don't want to download them onto your phone. But these are pretty popular modes of communication. And then lastly, I wanted to mention a great idea that Stevie suggested just a few days back to me was that if all else fails, you can always just put a sign in somebody's plot and put a piece of paper in a plastic bag or something. Because if people are gardening there, then if nothing else, you know that they're going to their garden. So if you were failing at communicating with people through every other digital medium, then you could just put a sign there that gets, contact information, and they'll know someone in this society who can translate for them if you're not able to get them a translated document. So you could always do that as well. Just be sure you put that plastic bag around your paper, otherwise that won't work out so well. So let's see, some other notes that I wanted to mention really quick is some resources for communicating with people. This is some information that we have on our website. I highlighted some of the particulars here for helping you find this. If you go to Garden Project's website and you follow some of those, some of those pathways there at the top, you go to our home, Get Help, Garden Project, Community Gardens, and then there's a whole page with Garden Leadership Committee resources. If you scroll down on that page, you'll find all these additional resources for garden leadership teams. And you can see I highlighted some of these by like using Google Translate. There's a resource there. Thank you, Stevie, for putting all this stuff together. An I Speak poster. These are all links that you can click on to get more information, communicating effectively across languages. And then I actually opened up one of these documents and posted it here. These common garden phrases listed by language. Here's the Arabic one that you can see pulled up, which is really great. There's actually more phrases on a second piece of paper, but I didn't put it all on this slide. But you can see there that this is actually a Word document that you can insert information into, and then you can just print that out, and you've got Arabic phrases or Burmese or Dari or Pali or Swahili. So that's a great resource for you all to take advantage of. And I think I was going to have a question here at the end of this, but I didn't. So if anybody has any comments or questions or ideas about how to communicate effectively within the community garden, do feel free to interact with the chat right now, or as always, feel free to unmute yourself too. I'm going to move on to the. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Linda, I was just going to say, we have a local newspaper that runs once a week. And there's a section in there called Around Town. So we've got a little blurb in there just saying, come volunteer and help us reopen the Clarkston Community Garden. Also, I wrote a letter to the editor. I wrote an article about the garden and it reopening, and that's how we're going to publicize it, is a letter to the editor.
That's great. It's really cool. Thanks for sharing, Linda. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Stevie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I love that, but like internally within the garden, I do find it helpful to have like a common place that gardeners know they can look if I have, something I have to like staple up on and have a flyer or something or an announcement to tell people. Having a message board or a spot in the shed for them to look at, it's always helpful too.
Fantastic. All right, if anything pops into your brains on this topic, you can always interact with the chat or bring it up. We've got free question and discussion time at the end here too. So I'm going to move on to the next slide and pass it over to Stevie.
Yeah, mine's going to be kind of quick because it's pretty straightforward. The maintenance section is all about repair of the physical spaces, garden mapping, volunteer coordination, very like hands-on tangible stuff. So next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about seasonal maintenance. And actually, this is a great picture of you, Matthew. Doing some seasonal maintenance, trimming fruit trees. All right. Next slide, please. So seasonal maintenance is all about like the stuff we have to do during the season to upkeep the garden. And we really want to make sure we stay on top of this because it keeps the problems small. It keeps them from growing into bigger issues, sometimes literally, over the years. So it's also a great way to bring gardeners together, having those work days or days where we can get together and do these small things to improve the common spaces is always great. It's like Mary Beth pointed out, it's a great way for somebody to support the garden who also might not want to garden or able to garden or just has a real passion for weeding or doing repairs on things. It also keeps our land agreements in good standing, right? It keeps our landlords happy, which is always incredibly important if we want to stay in the space. Next slide, please. So some examples of this can be the tree trimming, right? It's really hard to grow things under shade. So we want to make sure we're keeping the trees trimmed and back where they need to be, or if there's dead branches or things like that. Fence cleanup and maintenance is always important. If you let those little seedlings go too long, it's a lot easier to pull them out when they're little versus when they're, full trees. And it just keeps our fences in good repair. Pathway maintenance, you can see them lovely volunteers here laying wood chips. Making sure that our gardens are accessible for people is always important. Any trash cleanup, nobody wants to eat plastic in a garden. And making sure our shared spaces are maintained too. If you have a pavilion or a free garden or an herb garden for people, we really want to make sure we're all coming together and making sure that shared space is good. Painting, that's just always fun for people. That really brings together all skill levels. And compost development too. If you do have a shared compost within the garden, this is always a great seasonal project for people to do. Next slide, please. So some of the best practices we found is having teach-in for the gardeners to learn the systems. So like how to maintain a fence or irrigation in your garden, or how to use tools properly, like weed whackers or tillers. It really increases the knowledge base within the garden. So there isn't just one person who is the only person who knows how to repair irrigation when it breaks. You know, this really helps build that base for you, so that there's more eyes on the gardens. It also kind of cuts down on things breaking too. If everybody knows how to use the tiller properly, then there's less chance that people are going to break it. One of the great things I've seen is posting a picture in the shed of what it's supposed to look like when it's clean. So nobody could say, I didn't know what it was supposed to be. One of our garden leaders has like the picture posted and then all the tools outlined on each of the things. So there's no way anybody can say they didn't know. Also, it helps if no one in the garden is willing to step up and do the thing, then designating part of the garden budget to pay someone to either mow or weed whack or maintain those spaces is always nice. It's also helpful to keep basic repair tools in the shed for when, you know, if you have underground irrigation or, you know, small engines or rototiller, weed whacker, that kind of thing, having basic repair tools in the shed so that someone can replace it. Again, so there isn't just one person who's, you know, on call all the time. Every time the tiller breaks, someone else can help with that. Yeah, the last thing is using volunteers. I mean, a lot of these shared spaces, you know, it doesn't take very long for them to get out of hand. And sometimes it really is helpful to have a large group of people who are just gung-ho and ready to go for a few hours to pull something back and get it back to a norm. So use volunteers. There's a lot of groups around that are very happy and willing to help. And Garden Project, Matthew especially, can help connect you with those people. So if you ever need volunteers, I think we have a request form on our website that we'll share, where we can connect you with a volunteer group that's willing to come out. Next slide, please. And really, it just comes down to planning. I can't say this enough. Have a maintenance log, have a plan, have it written down somewhere. You know, we shouldn't have to guess when the last time the tiller was serviced, or the oil was changed. Having that maintenance log is so important. You know, because when you're the one person who knows everything and then you win the lottery and you go away, all of that knowledge goes with you. So having it written down is so important. And then keeping the funds available too. It's always nice to have a repair fund. So when, you know, when the tiller finally does breathe its last breath, you have a plan for how you're going to replace that, or when, you know, something catastrophic happens with the irrigation system, you're not scrambling to figure out how you're going to pay for that. I will say the garden improvement grants are very helpful here, but it's always nice to not have to necessarily wait on Garden Project. And then keeping a record of like how important procedures are done, how you turn off the water, how you turn it off, how you winterize your pipes, what areas of the garden are mowed. Because it's great to hand that off to volunteers, but if you have a no-till area or somebody planted garlic somewhere and you don't tell your mower that, garlic's going to be a lot shorter. So it's really important to like have a record of that. Where are the water lines so they don't get tilled over and cut? And have that in a place that more than one person can access. Next slide, please. So, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. I mean, every garden is unique and different, so everybody faces different challenges. If you want to share some of your challenges, I would say one of mine right now is invasive species taking over one of my gardens. It's mugwort and creeping Charlie, and you know, if you don't keep up on these things, they really do get out of control very quickly.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was just going to say bindweed. It's not. It's like
Poor paradise.
I honestly don't know of any other measures to take other than just like a very focused, intentional way of keeping on, just like continually hacking them back, or some kind of serious spray. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of our challenges. I don't know if the rest of you have other challenges as well. I will say
Thanks.
volunteers have been helpful. So, I mean, it really doesn't take long for some of this stuff to just get out of control. So volunteers are always great for helping with that stuff.
And it just makes me think how so much ties in, like that can become an educational event, and like things can evolve, everything from like the mugwort or the bindweed. It's, teaching people about that, getting it removed, what could we replace, learning about pollinators, having that be an engagement piece. So it's discouraging. I mean, we've all had our times where we just think this feels fruitless, dealing with this weed, but when you start thinking about what the alternative is, and could be a community engagement piece as well. So yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone with the maintenance all the time. So.
Yeah. And Garden Project can help with that too. I mean, we're happy to come out and, do a consultation and see what we can do to get you back. But I will hand it off.
Great. Thank you, Stevie. Okay, I'm going to be covering this next section, which is within our membership section. These are the folks within the community garden who are focused more on helping with plot-specific tasks. And the one that we're talking about right now is fund management. Fund management. Okay, sorry. I'm a dad of young kids, so it's like the bad dad jokes just come out of me. Anyway, I'll try to make this brief. So the things I'm going to cover here more kind of for this like treasury position, that'd be the person who'd be handling this within a community garden. More so just some tips for how to manage money that's been put in your hands, so that you're responsible now for this money and these funds that have come into the community garden. What do you do with it? This is a pretty broad overview, so if anybody has any tips that they want to give at the end of this or throughout, feel free to shoot that out. But first, I just want to talk about some of the ways of intaking money and how to start off thinking about that. So I'm just going to read off the slide here as we talk about how garden groups can accept membership dues, any reasonable amount for the support of the garden, and so that garden can continue to operate. In that, I've seen a pretty broad spectrum before of what that might look like. It could look like $10, $5, $20 or more, but usually registration fees for a garden are around there. And one of the things that we always want to encourage for within any community garden is that there's alternatives made available for people, so that it doesn't become this closed garden for people who can only pay in order to participate. There's alternatives other than paying those monetary dues. So some garden groups offer, like sliding scale dues, as I just talked about, as one option. Or there could be like in-kind service in the form of extra volunteer time, so that hopefully people can participate and do more on work days. But however you garden and however the community garden decides to handle it, that $0 alternative should definitely be offered. So a tip here is if you're collecting money for plot fees, getting it at the beginning of the season is best, because it's always a lot easier to get it at the beginning than it is to try to hunt people down throughout the season. So some other things to talk about. I just want to expound around this idea of giving people other options for plugging into the garden rather than paying. So an example of what that kind of in-kind service volunteer hour might look like. So one here is that if members, you could set up a garden so that members are expected or required, there's a question mark there, to sign up for a particular garden maintenance task. Again, back to Grow Pittsburgh that I had referred to earlier, I had asked them a question around this, and they had said that they had a lot of great success within their community garden network about setting up specific tasks for people rather than just general volunteer hours. Because if you create a volunteer hour system, then you're adding the additional task of having to have somebody manage that whole system and track people's hours, which could certainly work, but that's a lot of work. So another thing you could do is you could take a look at this example that I have on the top of the slide here of a general maintenance task list. This is from a community garden over in the Pittsburgh area that was kind of trying to give an overview and a timeline of some of the different tasks that were needing to be done within the community garden and how many volunteers were needed. And then people could just sign up on this Google form, and then that would be how they would participate. So, so that's an option. And there are different ways that you could organize that. One community garden in our area was able to get more funds channeled into their garden by allowing people to the other option of just kind of paying out. So if they didn't want to volunteer, they could just pay more money. So it's but you know, it's a way to raise funds. So if people are like, no, I don't want to commit 10 to 20 hours a year, I would just value paying more money to you, then that's a way to raise money. So I guess that's kind of why I'm going over all this is it's another way to intake money is creating some of these systems for A, getting people into the garden, but B, maybe just getting them to pay more money. We're not trying to trick anybody. We're just trying to have good, sustainable gardens. I also wanted to note, again, very broad overview. As we're thinking about taking in money, I just wanted to highlight some of these options for us. Of course, there's fundraising and grants. Now, this is not a lesson on how to do so, but I just wanted to highlight that we do have the Grow Lansing mini grants available in our area for gardens that are located within the Lansing city limits. And then we also are always trying to direct people to our garden improvement grant application that is on our website. You can find more information there, and we can, I think that Stevie may have sent a link on that earlier within our chat box. And then there are other businesses too that you can reach out to, such as Home Depot, that provide funds to community gardens at times as well.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Are those grants only available to community gardens within the greater Lansing area? In other words, Clarkston wouldn't be eligible for a grant from your organization, right?
Julie, do you mind speaking to that for a moment?
I was Googling where Clarkston is, and it looked like there's one outside of Detroit, but where is what county
So-
is it? We served a 7-county service region: Eaton, Ingham, Clinton, Shiawassee, Gratiot, Isabella, and Clare. So the Tri-County Lansing area, and then north to Clare. But so are you in one of those 7 counties?
No, we're in Oakland.
Oh, Linda, were you able to hear Julie's?
Yeah. So
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
No,
we
I
can hear you
can't.
now.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're in Oakland County.
Okay. Yeah, the resources that we have for this in particular, with funds associated, like compost or improvement funds, is pretty strict for our 7-county service region.
Okay.
However, like our free resources like you're on today and coming to any events, workshops, obviously those are open to anyone and everyone. I'm not super familiar with your area, but I know there is Keep Growing Detroit, and I do not know if they serve Clarkston or not, but they are a little closer to where you live, and they may be connected with have a connection for you in terms of that. However, Home Depot, you'd be eligible. So
Yeah.
I'd say go for it.
Right.
We've done Home Depot. Lowe's often has a good grant available. You might also want to just connect with community foundations. Check out
Yeah,
see
right.
if you have a local community foundation, which could be a great support. So
Right.
happy to
Even just
stay
like,
after this call and talk a little more specific with you as well,
Yeah.
Linda, if you like.
okay, I've got another meeting at 12:30, so I can't do that, but I'd like to hook up with you at some other point. But
Yeah.
we just applied for a grant from the Rotary Club, and the Rotary Club's mother organization will do a matching grant of half of that. And so there are a lot of community organizations, like you were just mentioning, where you can get money from. Maybe it's the Clarkston Community Garden, maybe it's the Lions, maybe it's Optimus. So a lot of community groups you can go to as well.
And Linda, I was just going to real quick with the Grow Lansing. it is pretty much Lansing and some of those grants, but I strongly encourage you to any grant that you see, ask.
Yep.
Reach out to whoever email for this one is Delisa. Ask them because you never know. And it never hurts to ask. And
Yep.
they might know of more grants in your area that you can apply for.
Mhm.
So absolutely ask away.
That's one thing I'm not shy about.
Yep.
It's great. Yeah, I think I was meaning to ask you, Mary Beth, during this slide, if you had any other suggestions or recommendations, but uh, I'm glad that you're so connected to this Grow Lansing grant as well.
Yeah. I actually have a grant into Grow Lansing for the orchard because sadly we lost 4 trees this winter
Ugh.
and I'm hoping to replace those. But it, that is my recommendation is ask, reach out to them, find out. Um, I've been on the advisory board for 5 years now, and it is just amazing to me what is available out there for people. And if we can't, because this doesn't fall in the guidelines for the Lansing neighborhood grants, and for the gardens, some of it does and some of it doesn't. And I know that's very confusing for some of our gardeners. We're going to find out who can help you. And that's my number one takeaway is, or give is ask them, ask what is available. What can you help me with?
That's great. Well, like I said, this is a general overview. The other thing I wanted to point out on this next slide is that it's a of course, there's other ways to bring in funds, and that's just through trying to cultivate more partners and partnerships, funders in connection with your garden. So if there are any institutions that you can pair yourself with within the community garden, that just makes your garden that much stronger and more sustainable. The more supportive networks, the stronger the garden. So you can identify and connect with a network. There's lots of different community groups, businesses out there. But not all gardens have a fiscal sponsor like this or an institution that they're affiliated with, but many community gardens have some type of collaboration, even if it's an informal one with other local groups. So lots of gardens are affiliated with churches, schools, apartment complexes, food pantries, so the food bank, such as ourselves, or other community organizations or nonprofits. So there's a wide range, and there's many more that we could list off here, but that's just an example. The more you're connecting with some of these institutions, the better off your garden will be sustainability wise, and there can be funding options that come in. I would recommend that as you try to reach out and connect with some of these other institutions or community groups, try to reach out to them in multiple ways, just like we were talking about communicating with gardeners earlier. Just have multiple channels, and also repeatedly try to build a relationship with them. If you'd really like to build a relationship with a particular business or religious organization, then just try to get involved with them, and over time, they might become more interested in the work of your community garden and start to share that vision with you.
I'm going to add one more thing. Brag. Don't be afraid to brag about, seriously, talk about your garden, talk about your projects and what's going on. I brag about the garden at my work. I've been there I've been working for Two Men in a Truck International for 24 years. They all know about my community garden. But through all of my bragging, I have gotten a tiller donated to me from a coworker. They they put together the money, my whole department, and they bought us a tiller. They also for my 20th anniversary, the executive team bought a bench and put a park bench in our garden because they know how passionate I am about the garden and how much it helps the neighborhood. So brag about it to your coworkers, to anyone that you see, that shows interest, because you never know where that money's going to come from.
Absolutely.
One last thing with bragging at my job is I work with all of our different over 400 locations throughout the US and Canada. One of my franchise owners sent me a check for $350 and said, use it however you can, because that is so cool. He's in Kansas. So I was able to get our garden shed from that. And we now have a really nice little garden shed that we can lock up with a combination lock, that all of our gardeners can have all these tools available for them. Brag. Talk about it as much as you can.
That is a great recommendation. It's a good piece of advice.
Yep.
Brag it up.
Brag it up. You never know who's going to send you a check.
Yep. Sounds great. Well, actually into like actual fund management, this is, I was getting a little far afield with some of those other points, but we're all interested in how to bring in money, of course, into the garden. Once you have it, what do you do with it? So one suggestion that we've had within a community garden within our network is that you can utilize MSU FCU, which is a local credit union to us. I guess that they're getting more far afield in the Michigan area. But MSU FCU allows social clubs and other unincorporated businesses to open accounts without a DBA, doing business as. So this garden club just needed to show their meeting minutes that stated who would be on the account. And then they have to have one person identified as the lead and have others, officially added with driver's license, social security number, address. So there's some key information that's needed to be given, but people can be easily added or removed as the leadership changes within a garden. So that is a great resource to use, MSU FCU, so that you don't just have people's money underneath your mattress or something like that. And then as a general tip for all of garden fund management, transparency is huge within all this. So as you're taking in money, you're placing it just, I thought I had a note on one of the slides, but I just wanted to verbalize that tip, that overall, the key to proper fund management within the community garden is transparency, where the funds are being kept and how they're going to be applied within the garden. Because hopefully you want to apply these to things like Mary Beth was just talking about, new infrastructure like a garden shed, irrigation repairs, new hoses, tools, so on and so forth. So just communicating with everybody about how things are being spent is a huge, huge deal within the garden. Are there other tips, sources for garden funds? Anything else? I think we were already talking a little bit around this question past few minutes, but if there are any other tips that people want to shoot out there regarding managing funds within the garden, please shout them out.
You're working with youth, that kind of opens up a whole other option for funding as well with the National Youth Gardening Association. Whole Foods might be in your area, Linda, where they would have a Whole Kids Foundation you could reach out to. And sometimes grocery stores are just willing to put out, a little change bin, and maybe they'd be willing to do that for your community garden as well, so those local groceries and perhaps a match as well. So yeah, it's just ask. I love that, Mary Beth. Just putting it out there.
I've had good luck with Home Depot. They do have grants you can apply for, but a lot of times the store managers themselves will have a discretionary fund for store credit of up to about $500. So if you just walk in and talk to the manager, a lot of times they'll just give you stuff.
Wow. That's very cool. Well, lastly, I just wanted to make some space for if there are any questions, comments, feedback? I think we've covered a lot. We've covered a pretty wide array of things here when we're talking about hospitality, summer maintenance, communicating across the entire year, and lastly, fund management and hosting great events. So yeah, we've been all over the place, but we kind of have to be for a seminar like this because we're talking about like how to do the garden all throughout the summer. So, that's why we've got a pretty broad array of topics here. But one thing I would love to hear from folks is if there was one idea that resonated with you. Feel free to put that into the chat, or again, speak it out on how you might put that into action. Hopefully you all are familiar with SMART goals, something that's specific, measurable, and I don't remember any of the other ones, but it's an acronym for something that's supposed to make it realistic for you to attain. So
I think funding ideas were very helpful for me, and I was not aware of the Whole Kids Foundation associated with Whole Foods. So that's an avenue to pursue. I do know that Kroger also has funding available. I have not applied for anything with them yet, but that is another source.
you said Kroger, Linda?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have, I have heard of their program. I haven't looked into it, but yep, they'll give, other things maybe to think about, depending upon the size of your garden is one of the things that we're hoping to do is have a kickoff meeting. And we're going to see if we can get some of our people, some of our legislatures to come to this kickoff meeting. It'll be a fundraiser, have a local celebrity, and I'm hoping that I can find somebody at the Greater Lansing Food Bank who would come and be a guest speaker as well. So, if you think about things like that, you could sell tickets or have different gold, silver, platinum levels of sponsorship and try to gather some money. And then if you can invite people like, I'm not sure, excuse me, like our legislatures or are from the Department of Agriculture, and just start building up some, momentum. And as a follow-up for us, our garden has been around for a long time, but when COVID came, it was let go. And it's really reverted back to a meadow, and the deer fences are down, the gates are down. It's like nature just took her hand and slapped everything she didn't like laying on her and put it down. So we're starting basically from scratch, but next year as a follow-up to those, the kickoff meeting is maybe a farm to table, again, fundraiser.
That's great.
Get some of the restaurants to, donate food.
Yeah.
Yep. See, and we're a very small
Mhm.
community garden.
Yeah.
And so for me, one of the only other things is reuse. I can't tell you how many times everything, not everything, but most of what we have in the garden, I just put word out to the neighbors, hey, I'm looking for some wood panels, or right now it's pallets. We're looking for some pallets. And I got one of our new neighbors, gardeners, because I asked for pallets. He brought a pallet up to me and really thought, I could do this. And he's got his plot all weeded already and planned out, and his whole family is now involved in it. So
That's,
it can really help by asking for reuse. And I love repurposing anything. All the craft that I have are scrap wood or scrap tires. And people like that too. They like that repurposing. And it doesn't cost you anything then.
Right.
And
that is really fantastic. Yeah. I
yeah,
love this theme of like getting people involved by asking them. Well, this sounds kind of silly, but you're getting people involved by asking them for
yeah.
for things that you would legitimately need. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
and they are so grateful to get rid of this stuff from their garage or their basement. It's like, I have 4 tires sitting on my porch. What am I going to do? Ooh, give it to me. I'll make some type of planner. And that's I've got a teacup, I've got the wishing well, we have Freddie the Frog. I mean, we just use what is other people's junk. And then they love seeing their junk into something that's creative and fun. And so it's just very multi-purposeful, you know. And don't throw that wood away because I can always use it somewhere.
Uh, this is all great stuff. Thanks so much, Mary Beth. Well, I'm gonna move on to the future, in which I just want to highlight that we've got a next seminar series coming up. Again, these are all kind of seasonally pertinent. Our next ones coming up are going to be they're covering the fall season. When is this? This is August. Okay, so we're taking a break for the month of July. We've been trying to do these at the beginning of the months, but we're going to take a break for July because we feel like all these topics that we've covered today kind of get us through the summer months. And then we're going to be talking about growing for donation, having a site record keeper, diving more into that asset list that Julie was talking about briefly today. And again, a deeper dive into food donation, and then getting people prepared for thinking about winter maintenance and prepping for the fall cleanup. So that's going to be our next seminar series coming up in early August. We're going to have a virtual meeting like we are right now, and those are always followed up the following Thursday by an in-person seminar. That is, I think that one's going to be around our resource center demo garden area. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you everybody for joining us today. I also do want to mention too, just because it's fun that we're doing all these things. After that fall one, we're going to be having a little celebration for all the community garden leaders in the area at our resource center on Thursday, October 3rd. That's going to kind of then lead into our harvest potluck for everybody in the garden network afterwards. But we want to have a time for people to meet up and talk through reflections on the season. So we're looking forward to those events in the coming months. That's a long ways off yet. We're just starting the summer season here. So our last slide is our contact info. If you would like to reach out to Julie, Stevie, or myself with any further questions, please feel free to do so. We've got our email address there, and you can always call us at our main line as well if you'd like to talk through things. But that is it. I think there's a little date there that's posted that I forgot to edit, so ignore that Friday, May 3rd thing. Sorry about that. But anyway, it's been a pleasure to talk with you all today. Thanks so much for joining us. And I think I'm going to stop the recording here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for joining, Linda.
Sure. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry I was late. I had trouble joining again.
Well,
You
that's
made
okay.
it. That